back to the latest episode of An American in Thailand, airing every Friday. This program is broadcast from Ratchamakon University of Technology, Peranakan, and it will be coming to you in two parts. For the first part, I will introduce a certain topic about being an American here living in Thailand. Maybe about food, could be about travel, or culture, anything like that. We'll then take a break, and in the second part of the program, we will get into examples and more specifics. All right, let's get to the program. Welcome everyone, my name is Gary Gray, and I am your host for the An American in Thailand program. And I am a university teacher, and English teacher of course, here at Ratchamakon University of Technology, Peranakan. I've been teaching here for over 8 years, so I feel at this point as though I have a pretty good idea of the Thai culture. And so I can compare the two, between the American culture and the Thai culture. Now when I say American, I point this out often, I mean the United States. Some people in the rest of the Americas get bothered when people from the U.S. say they are American, as if the rest of them aren't American. We're not trying to be offensive. The full name of our country is the United States of America. So sometimes we just shorten it to America. So we mean no offense when we say America. I try to make sure I say the U.S. more often here, but even the title of our program, I mean, what are you going to say? A U.S. citizen here in Thailand? I mean, it's no, an American in Thailand sounds a lot better. So I will sometimes say American. I do try to point out U.S. more often. All right, so when I talk about being from America, I mean I'm from the U.S. And when I'm talking about the differences, I want to mention this because when I'm talking about the differences, I'm talking about the differences between the U.S. and Thailand. And for some episodes, that can be important. In our last episode, we talked about pageants. And in parts of like Central America, Latin America, which includes Central America, but also is part of South America, they're very much more into beauty pageants and things like that than the U.S. is. So sometimes that distinction is important. So when I'm mentioning America here, I mean the U.S. And I'm not trying to annoy people from other parts of the Americas. It's just the way I say it. But I usually try my best to say the U.S. Okay. So what we're going to be talking about in this week's episode is religion. Ooh, that's a dangerous topic, right? Oh, you don't want to talk about religion. You don't want to talk about politics. We've done politics before. But just like in the politics episode, I'm not really going to be very controversial here. There was maybe a tiny bit I said that was controversial with politics because I talked about things that are better or worse about our systems. So, if I'm saying the Thai system is worse in some way, I'm criticizing Thailand's system, but whatever. It was a small thing, and it was really just an objective observation about the way we do things here in Thailand versus the way we do things in America. And I also pointed out some things about politics that are worse in America. So it really was not very controversial at all. And that's going to be the same for this topic. It sounds a little scary when I say we're going to be talking about religion. No, this will not be controversial at all. Probably even less controversial than the political episode, which was not even controversial. We're really just going to discuss the similarities and the differences within our culture. So I'm not going to be looking at any specific details of a religion. Well, a little bit because it affects the culture, but not a lot. So we're not going to be really analyzing like Buddhism, which is the main religion here in Thailand, or Christianity, which is the biggest religion in the U.S. We're not really getting into that. That's not what we're talking about. We're not comparing Buddhism with Christianity. There's inherently going to be a small element of that because of some of the beliefs within those religions. But for the most part, we're not touching on that. We're just talking about religion within our cultures. So I'm going to discuss some similarities and some differences. And in the first half here, we're going to look mostly at the similarities. So, some of the similarities here is some of the similarities that we have in the U.S. versus Thailand when it comes to religion is that there is what we call a heterogeneity. Okay, that's a big word. What does that mean? It means that everything is not the same. Like if you say something is homogeneous, it means they're all the same. So heterogeneity means that not everything is the same here. And the U.S. and Thailand are the same that way. Now, I would say there is less diversity here in Thailand just because of the popularity of Buddhism, so it takes up a greater percentage of the overall number one spot for religion than Christianity does in the U.S. But they're still kind of similar in terms of their size, as far as the percentage of people who are of that religion. And there also still are a lot of other religions in both of our countries. I'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment, as far as which ones are more or less popular. But we both have, both countries, the U.S. and Thailand, both have religious heterogeneity. We both have multiple religions within our society. And importantly, since we have these multiple religions, we also have religious freedom. So you are free to practice those religions. A lot of countries that are not like that. Certain religions are outlawed. Now, I do know that some people here in Thailand may sort of disagree with this. For example, I know there's a lot of issue. I mean, I haven't heard of any recently, but sometimes, occasionally, in southern Thailand, with the folks of Muslim faith feeling like they're being repressed. So maybe they don't feel like there's really religious freedom. There are also certain things, for example, in the U.S. that may be outlawed, which may be part of someone's religion. We have one religion in the West that had to actually change one of their beliefs in order just to become a state. And you actually see some of these people here in Thailand because they were trying to recruit people into their religion. And they are called Mormons. It is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's another name they go by. And you will see some of them here in Thailand. It's usually young people. They'll be dressed in a suit. Usually not a full suit. They don't usually have a jacket on, but they'll be dressed nicely, shirt, tie, and they go around trying to recruit people into their religion. And once upon a time, they believed in a man being able to have multiple wives. The United States, in the U.S., that was against the law. So because these guys were located kind of in one region, they kind of controlled that region, and it was the state of Utah, and it's still where they're headquartered. And so they wanted to become a state in the U.S. back when the U.S. was still growing and adding states. And the government said, no, not unless you get rid of allowing men to have multiple wives. And so they did. Now, that may seem a little weird. You shouldn't be changing your religious beliefs for the sake of what a country is dictating to you, but I guess they decided it wasn't that important of a part of their religion. But my point is, there is not always unlimited religious freedom. There are also some people with like very extreme religious views about how they can treat their wives or their daughters, and some of that can cross over into abuse, and that's just abuse. It's illegal. So even if your religion, in your belief system of your religion, you think it's okay, no, you can't do it. So when I say we have religious freedom, I think both countries, it's not unlimited. It doesn't mean that you can use an excuse that, oh, well, that's my religious belief in order to break the law. No, you can't break the law just because you claim your religion says so. But generally speaking, we have religious freedom in both countries. And they're both very open and diverse about it. And what I mean by that is it's pretty mixed. Different people will hang out with different people. Here in Thailand, most people are Buddhist. In my classroom, I often have a couple of Christians, a couple of Muslims. So they're not just going to, there's not like some Muslim university that all the Muslims go to, or some Christian university that all the Christians go to. I believe there actually are a few universities and schools like that here, but they can also just go to a kind of regular public university, like our university here. And it's the same in the United States. You can go to any public school. They do have private schools, again, which are religious-based, but anyone can attend any public school. So that's what I mean when I say it's open and diverse. All right, now as far as which religions we have, it's interesting because we could talk about that in the second half where we talk about differences. Because like I said, Buddhism is number one here in Thailand, but Christianity is number one in the U.S. But here's the thing. Really, we have almost the same religions. It's just how many of each person from that religion we have in each country. So the ranks of which religion is most popular, etc., are different. But there are Christians here. There are Buddhists in America. Plenty of them. There are even some Buddhist temples. There aren't a lot, but I know of a few. I lived in the New York City area for a while. We have some Buddhist temples near there. There are Buddhist temples. We talked about the Muslims that live here. We have plenty of Muslims in the U.S., and they live everywhere throughout the U.S. There tends to be this kind of area where there are more of them in the upper Midwest part of our country, but they are everywhere in the U.S. They can be anywhere. How about some other religions? How about Hindus? Okay, not as popular in either of our countries, and probably mostly brought in from immigrants, maybe from India, for example. They still live there. They still have their religious freedom to practice their religion. Yeah, it exists. How about the Jewish faith? There's quite a lot of that in America and in the U.S., but what about here in Thailand? You don't see it very much. You don't see it much, but I know they're here. In fact, I have actually walked past a couple of times the Jewish center here in Bangkok. So, yes, they're here. So we have people of the Jewish faith. You get into even some of the smaller religions, like the Sikhs. I've seen plenty of them. If you walk around Sukhumvit, there's lots of Sikhs in that area. We have plenty of them in the U.S. as well. It's a smaller religion. There aren't a lot, but you do see them from time to time. We have them. We have Sikhs in both countries. So we basically have all of the same religions in Thailand and the U.S. Yes, we have different amounts of different ones of them, But we have the same ones. We also have plenty of people in both countries who are not religious at all. So they may call themselves atheists or at least agnostic. Agnostic means you're not really sure. And if you're not sure, you may not really believe in anything. So that's kind of in the same group, maybe. There are some people that are questioning but still have kind of a base religion in which they grew up. But I would consider agnostic to be kind of in line with atheism, except that agnostics just are not sure. So we have a lot of people like that in both countries as well. So those are the similarities between the two. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take a quick break now, and when we come back, we will look at the differences between the U.S. and Thailand when it comes to religion. All right, let's take a quick break. Welcome back, everyone. All right, so this week we're talking about the similarities and differences within religion, within the culture between the U.S. and Thailand. And again, it's very non-controversial. I know talking about religion seems, a scary topic. We shouldn't talk about that. But we're really just talking about kind of within the culture. What are the similarities and differences? Okay, so in the first half, we talked about the similarities, the fact that we have multiple religions, we have religious freedom. It's kind of open, diverse, and kind of mixed. Like people will intermingle, which just seems normal to us, right? But as I mentioned in the first part of our program, in a lot of countries, they actually have certain religions that are outlawed. So this is not necessarily common for the rest of the world to have this kind of religious freedom. All right, so some of the differences, we're going to talk about that here in the second half. So obviously, we did mention this in the first half. There's one big difference in the fact of which religions are more dominant, like Buddhism here and Christianity in the U.S. Okay. Again, we do have almost all of the same religions, but just in the amounts, like how many people are practicing that. Also, I believe the Muslim religion, would be more popular here in Thailand as a percentage. Obviously, there's more people in America, so there's probably more Muslims in America. But as a percentage of the population, I'm pretty sure Islam is higher here in Thailand than in the U.S. It's fairly uncommon in the U.S. It definitely is getting more and more common. It's one of the faster growing religions. I'm not sure it's the fastest, but it's one of the faster growing religions. So it's becoming more common, but I think Islam still ranks higher here in Thailand. And Judaism, which is the technical name for the Jewish faith, there's definitely a lot more of them, both in raw numbers and even in percentage in America, in the U.S., than there are here in Thailand. So the rankings of where each religion ranks in each country is very different. But again, I mentioned in the similarity section that we do actually have all the same religions. Buddhists in the U.S., Christians here in Thailand. We have all the same religions. Now, one thing that I'm actually not sure is different is I am fairly certain, and I should have looked this up when doing the research for this program, but I apologize, I didn't look it up. But it's about having an official religion. I believe here in Thailand they do. If they do, it would obviously be Buddhism, and I believe Buddhism is the official religion of Thailand. I could be wrong about that. There may be no official religion, but I believe there is, and it's Buddhism. Whereas in America, we have written straight into our Constitution not only just a freedom of religion, but a statement in our Constitution where the government cannot promote an individual religion. So, as such, there's no official religion in the U.S. It's actually against the Constitution. Can't do it. Not legal. Now, some would argue under the current political system in America, that's getting a little... They're kind of pushing the limits on that quite a bit right now because our Supreme Court is made up of some very religious folks, and they're kind of allowing more and more religion to come into things. But at least if you go strictly by the words of the Constitution of the United States, there is no official religion. So that's not a thing we do in the U.S. So that's another difference. Another difference, I would say, is that religion is more integrated into the Thai culture. For example, we will have sometimes ceremonies at our university. They're not very often, but they occur. Or we will sometimes have students go and make merit at the temple in an organized way, organized by the university. It's kind of ingrained within the culture. The number of temples here in Thailand is massive compared to like the number of churches in the U.S. It's massive. There's like 10, I forget the number, but it's over 10,000. There's over 10,000 temples here in Thailand. I'm sure there are over 10,000 churches in America, in the U.S., but the U.S., of course, is a much bigger country as well. So compared to the size, there are way more temples. It's just... And then when the monks walk around in the morning to collect, people come out and give them things. What I usually see people giving them is food. I'm sorry, since I'm not Buddhist, I don't know all of the details, but what I most commonly see them giving is food. So when the Buddhist monks come around and collect, again, you don't really see that in U.S. culture. There are not religious groups going around trying to collect things. I'm not saying there aren't religious groups that don't go around trying to convince people to join their religion. We talked about that in the first part of our program with the Mormons who send their youth out to go and try to get people to join. So there's certainly some of that goes on, but there's not this large-scale process. There's not this cultural thing where you have all these religious folks going out and doing something together, like we see here in Thailand with the monks going out and collecting. So it's very much more... So Buddhism is very much more ingrained in our culture. Now again, this isn't black and white. I'll give you two examples why. For one, I do think, as ingrained in the culture as it is, religion does take somewhat less priority here in Thailand. And it's in a weird way. It's not that it doesn't take priority. It's that the teachings within Buddhism aren't quite so harsh. What do I mean by that? Okay, well, in Christianity, which is the number one religion in the U.S., in Christianity, there are many who believe that faith comes before or is more important than family. Family is very important, but faith is most important. So there are some people who will jeopardize their family for the sake of their faith. Whereas here in Thailand with Buddhism, I don't think they put that priority there. And it's within the religion. I think family is kind of the most important thing. And I think, and again, I'm not Buddhist, so I hope I don't offend anyone with my lack of understanding. But I think that Buddhism is more just kind of intertwined with the family. It's not like one is more important than the other. And just to give you an example of what I mean by sometimes they'll put faith ahead of family in America, in the U.S., is one thing. It doesn't happen as much now as LGBTQ has become a little bit more accepted, although there are still a lot of people that are against it. But it is more accepted now. But back 20, 30, 40 years ago, it would not be uncommon for Christian parents, if they found out that their son or daughter was gay, they would kick them out of the house. Get rid of them. As if they're not their child anymore. Because they put their faith above their own family. And in the Christian faith, some believe, it depends on your interpretation, but some people believe that it looks down very strongly at being gay. And so that's kind of what I mean. So it's a weird difference, because I say it's more integrated into the Thai culture, and yet in some ways it takes a lower priority. Even though it's integrated, most people in Thailand see something with regard to Buddhism every day, whether it's the monks or your temples or whatever. They make a lot of people who are real strong believers in their faith. They'll make merit quite often. It's very much part of the culture here. And yet, in some ways, it takes less priority, and it's because of what is taught within the religion. Because in the U.S., within Christianity, your religion is supposed to take number one priority. And so it's a very weird thing, because it's considered less important in the U.S., and yet if you are religious, especially if you're kind of a real fundamentalist is actually what we call it. If you're a real fundamentalist, it's number one importance. So it's a weird thing. It's less important in our culture in the U.S. because we don't have a lot of... It doesn't like infiltrate schools or businesses or things like that very much. You don't see that. You see the little Buddhist shrines on the roads and on street corners here, and every time someone walks by, they will do the Y sign to the temple, to the shrine, to the Buddhist shrine. And again, not something you see within the U.S. culture. It just doesn't invade all of those parts of our culture within the U.S. So it's a really interesting and complicated difference. Because within your own personal life, if you are one of those people who has strong beliefs, it is extremely important, more important in the U.S. probably than it is here in Thailand, your religion. But culturally, I would say it's considered less important in the U.S. So very complicated, but very interesting differences. All right, so those were kind of the biggest similarities and differences I could think of. I'm sure there are more than that, but those are the biggest ones I could think of. So we're going to end it right there with this episode on some of the differences and similarities in religion. And that differences section, you can see that it gets really kind of complicated there as far as the importance of religion within our cultures, as far as which country is it more important in or less important. And I think within culture, it's probably less important within the U.S. than it is here in Thailand. But on a personal level, it may be more important to at least some people in the U.S. than it is here in Thailand. All right. So that's it for this episode. We're talking about similarities and differences between religion in our culture between the U.S. and Thailand. So I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's An American in Thailand program. Let me reach out to any young people out there and ask them to consider our university if you're getting ready to head off to university anytime soon. We are at Ratchamakon University of Technology, Peranakan. All right, please stay with us and tune back in next week for another interesting episode. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.